Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast. And today, I'm going to go my review of Monday Night Raw. Starting off the night, we have a Rhea Ripley segment. Rhea comes out to the ring, grabs a microphone. Rhea talks about SummerSlam. She also mocks Dominic. Rhea then talks about Liv Morgan. Liv and Dom end up showing up. They're in the crowd. Dom then gives reasons why he left Rhea. Dominic then mocks Rey Mysterio. Liv Morgan then mocks Rhea. Priest is here. He's behind Dominic and Liv Morgan. Priest attacks Dominic. Rhea then goes after Liv, and then Carlito attacks Priest. So it looks like there's obviously some unfinished business here between the Judgment Day, Rhea Ripley, and Damian Priest. After that, we go into our first official match of the night, pretty much an impromptu match, if you will. It is Damian Priest versus Carlito. I thought it was a good match, man. It was a back-and-forth matchup. Priest was keeping the pace of the match. Carlito hits a DDT on Priest in the middle of the ring. Priest then hits a flatliner on Carlito, as well as a broken arrow. And then Priest hits his signature chokeslam on Carlito, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match is Damian Priest. After the match, JD McDonagh comes out to the ring. He attacks Priest. Judgment Day are here as well. They attack Priest. Rhea Ripley shows up, and then Priest hits a chokeslam on JD McDonagh. Hats off to Priest for getting the win in that matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Odyssey Jones versus a jobber. This was a glorified squash match. Odyssey was keeping the pace throughout the entire match, with Odyssey hitting the finish, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Odyssey Jones. After the match, the Final Testament come out to the ring. Cross then mocks the New Day. Cross wonders if Odyssey Jones is going to replace Big E. And then Kofi grabs the microphone and says he wants Final Testament versus the New Day with Odyssey Jones next week. Definitely looking forward to that matchup next week between the Final Testament and the New Day. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is a Texas Tornado tag match. It is Alpha Academy versus the Creed Brothers. Again, I thought it was a good match. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with Creeds keeping the pace of the match. Otis then hits a worm in the middle of the ring. Ivy now then attacks Maxine Dupree, which allowed the Creed Brothers to hit the roll-up, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match are the Creed Brothers. Hats off to the Creed Brothers for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is a tag team matchup for the number 1 contendership for the Women's Tag Team Championships. It is Damage Control versus the Pure Fusion Collective. I thought it was a decent match, back and forth matchup between both teams, with Damage Control keeping the pace of the match. Io then hits a moonsault. Alba Fire and Isla Dawn attack Damage Control, and this match ends up turning into a no contest. Moving on from that, we have a Randy Orton segment. Orton comes out to the ring. He talks about winning the world title about 20 years ago, and that he was one of the, if not the youngest world heavyweight champion of all time. Gunther is here after Orton makes those comments. Gunther then mocks Orton. Gunther says that the new era is here and that he's a part of it. Orton then talks about his family. Orton gets USA chants from the crowd. Gunther then says Orton falls under pressure. Gunther then mocks Orton's family, calling Randy Orton the weakest link of the Orton family. After that, McIntyre's music hits. He comes down to the ring. Then Orton then hits an RKO on Gunther with a distraction of McIntyre. Punk is here. Punk attacks McIntyre, and then they go to the backstage area. So it looks like there's obviously some unfinished business there between McIntyre and Punk. And obviously this high-profile matchup coming up at Bash in Berlin between Orton and Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship. Definitely looking forward to that match coming up in a couple weeks. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Miz versus Bronson Reed. I thought it was a good match. It was a back-and-forth matchup. Reed was keeping the pace throughout the match. Reed then hits a Death Valley driver on the Miz. Reed then hits a tsunami off the top rope, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Reed. After the match, Reed attacks R-Truth, and then Reed hits multiple tsunamis on R-Truth. Looks like R-Truth's going to be out for a little while. So, again, Bronson Reed is on a destruction path to try to become the new top dog, if you will, for Monday Night Raw. So he already took out Seth Rollins last week, and it looks like now he targeted R-Truth. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the main event of Monday Night Raw. It is a 2 out of 3 falls match for the Intercontinental title. It is Sami Zayn versus Braun Breaker. I thought this was a great match. Back and forth matchup between Zayn and Braun Breaker, with Braun keeping the pace of the match. Zayn then hits a Helluva Kick quickly on Breaker, pins for the 3. Zayn gets the first fall. Zayn then goes for a moonsault off the barricade, but Braun counters it with throwing Zayn over the barricade. Braun then hits a Frankensteiner off the top rope on Zayn for a near fall. Breakker then hits a spear, 2 spears on Zayn, pins for the 3, and Braun gets the second fall. We go into sudden death. Braun then hits a clothesline off the apron, sending Zayn over the announce table to the outside. Zayn then goes for a top rope maneuver, but he is met with another spear from Breakker, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match and still Intercontinental Champion is Braun Breakker. Couple things I want to talk about quickly, man, before I get out of here about Monday Night Raw. Pretty much, I mean, I don't want to sound like a broken record here, man, but I've been saying it now for the past couple weeks that the main roster and what they're doing right now are levels above everybody else. Obviously, you know, there's a lot of news coming out from AEW, and I mentioned this last week about certain superstars possibly coming over to the main roster. I know the Lucha Bros are a hot topic right now. There was even rumors that Pentagon Jr. will be in Orlando sometime this week, training at the Performance Center, so it definitely looks like the Lucha Bros will be on their way over to WWE. My thought process on this is the same thing I told you guys before, man. I have no tribalism with either one of the companies. I want both companies to succeed. But I will say this, as I guess if you want to call it a negative with AEW, I will call it a negative with AEW. AEW is starting to lose a lot of their OGs, the original guys that were with AEW, and Penta and Phoenix were a part of that original group that came into AEW. Now, I will also say this. Do I think Pentagon Jr. and Rey Fenix will prosper in WWE? Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the sky's the limit for Penta and Phoenix over in WWE, and they can help out a tag team division right now that, you know, desperately needs more talent for the tag team division over in WWE. And with the addition of possibly Pentagon Jr. and Phoenix, it only elevates the tag team division even more for Monday Night Raw and or SmackDown. But there's other names I obviously added to that list, and I mentioned them multiple times in the past too. Ricky Starks. Ricky Starks, to me, is on the short track list to go to WWE as well. I don't think he really wants to work with AEW anymore. I think, you know, Ricky Starks and AEW kind of had a falling out, and Ricky Starks possibly wants to go over to WWE. And for what it's worth, I think Ricky would do great over in NXT. I think Ricky Starks could be a flagship bearer, if you will, carrying the NXT brand and a future NXT World Champion. And there's a lot of great matches that he can have on the NXT brand. Absolutely. But one of the biggest names that popped up to me that was kind of shocking from possible AEW talent going over to WWE was Daniel Garcia. Now, I know some people were like, well, why are we talking about AEW talent when we're talking about Monday Night Raw? Well, this is important because these talents that are coming over from AEW can shake up the landscape coming into the main roster or NXT. And the biggest name that I took away from the possible people from AEW coming over to WWE was Daniel Garcia. Daniel Garcia, I believe his contract is coming up, or his contract is up, and he's trying to figure out what he wants to do. And from what I understand, he has conflicted thoughts on really what he wants to do between staying with AEW or going over to WWE. My standpoint with Garcia is the same thing with Ricky Starks, in the aspect that he would do great either in NXT or AEW. Do I feel as if Garcia has unfinished business in AEW? Yes, I do. And I think Ricky Starks is on that same boat. But it seems to me Ricky Starks is pretty much 90% checked out of AEW. I feel like he has no interest whatsoever to stay with the brand, and that he might end up going over to AEW, and WWE, and God bless him if he does. But Daniel Garcia, I mean, it's up in the air. He can stay with AEW or go over to WWE. But besides that, Monday Night Raw last night, again, was a solid show. I'm not going to sit here and say it was the greatest Raw of all time, but again, the main roster has been firing on all cylinders, and they continuously keep building up towards storylines and making things interesting. Hence the Gunther versus Randy Orton match. I mean, Orton, I think it was a week ago, Orton made a comment that really stuck with me in the back and forth segment that he had with Gunther. And that the fact that Orton believes that the fans need a revamp, if you will, of the Ric Flair and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat rivalry again. And it's a lot of praise. I'm not trying to take anything away from Randy Orton or Gunther. But to that just remark that Orton made about having another Flair-Orton revamp, if you will, that rivalry between two superstars, I could see it. And to be honest with you, I think this is something where, I mean, like Orton said it himself last night, this is going to be something going into Bash in Berlin where Orton makes history. Or this can be something where we see Gunther as World Heavyweight Champion for a very long time, and he makes a dominant run with that belt. And am I against it? Absolutely not. I'm also not against Orton beating Gunther for the World Heavyweight title. Now, do I believe Orton will? No. I think Gunther needs to carry that belt for a while. I don't want him to hot potato that belt, and beat Damian Priest and then drop it the next pay-per-view or the next PLE, if you will, to Randy Orton, with all due respect to Orton. But, again, man, they're firing on all cylinders. You have Roman Reigns coming back on SmackDown. Obviously, they're continuing that bloodline story. They're, kind of putting Jacob Fatu to the side right now, give him some time, and then come back around sometime in August, maybe a week or two, obviously. So, I mean, the one thing that I love about WWE is they continuously keep adding to the storyline and making it better, making it worthwhile, making you intrigued on what's going to happen next week. And Monday Night Raw and SmackDown do, great work with doing that. They get you invested, they get you in tune, and they want you to, after the episode is over, leave you with a climax on what the hell is going to happen next. And the main roster has a tendency to do that quite a bit. And it makes for great television and great for the ratings. Which is something I wish AEW would adapt and start doing that and get to doing storylines where fans can get invested. But all in all, man, there's not much more I can say about Raw and SmackDown. Right now, Raw and SmackDown, especially Raw, because we're talking about Raw, they're firing on all cylinders, man. They're doing great work right now, and I'm loving the work that Gunther's doing right now as a World Heavyweight Champion. And I think Gunther, as far as I'm concerned, sky's the limit. I know I gave him a lot of praise last week, kind of saying that he has a lot of resemblance to Bruno Sammartino, which I know there's a lot of high praise. And I'm not saying he is Bruno Sammartino. I'm saying he's Sammartino-ish. And the way that he carries that title and how he carries himself as a professional wrestler gives off Bruno Sammartino, Ric Flair vibes. And I think he's going to have a hell of a run with that belt, and hopefully he does. I think Gunther is your prototypical world champion, and I think he will do a hell of a job with that belt, carrying that belt, and giving that belt more of a spotlight than what Damian Priest did. And I think having this event at Bash in Berlin is definitely going to solidify that, not only for the World Heavyweight title, but especially for Gunther and Gunther's career. So I'm definitely looking forward to that matchup. Bash in Berlin is going to be awesome. Gunther versus Orton for the World Heavyweight title. It's a high marquee matchup, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. But like I said, man, Raw was decent last night. Not the best Raw of all time, but it definitely wasn't a bad Raw. I like the fact that they're continuing storylines, especially with the Judgment Day, and now with Gunther and Randy Orton. So again, I'm definitely looking forward to that matchup at Bash at Berlin. But with that being said, this is my review of Monday Night Raw. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.